The round of 16 has been completed. 8 national teams have gone through. 8 national teams have gone home. This round of 16 has been settled. Today, the last 2 games were played, but this round of 16 officially has ended. And 8 nations have been sent home: Canada, Paraguay, Brazil, sadly, Mexico, Portugal, sadly, USA, sadly, Egypt, and Colombia. For those that don't know, this is, para esos que no saben, esto es pase ambidiestro, ambidextrous pass, fútbol honestamente, soccer, football honestly. But some of the matches had evident inconsistency, and other matches were not affected by the inconsistency because there was no inconsistency on the officials. But some matches keep getting stained by this VAR technology, this automated system, these assistance in general from technology, and the decisions that some of these officials have been taking. The game has been affected in some of these matches. In other matches, the game was clean. The referees did a great job. But some referees, whether it was in these games or previous games, their actions have been questionable. And this whole tournament has been surrounded by great things, but at the same time, situations where the credibility of the organization, of the people that run the organization, of the officials that are involved in these games, some of their credibility is questionable due to actions that have been done during some of the games. But the round of 16 is settled. The round of 16 has given us the winners that have gone through and the national teams that have lost, that have gone home. But we're going to start from the first national team, from the first match, and the first national teams that faced off in this round of 16. We're going to summarize this round of 16 and events that happened in the matches. What is it that are some very contradicting situations from officials in certain games, and what is the takeaway from this national teams that got sent home in the future for these national teams that got sent home. But we're going to start with mainly a Canada against Morocco. A Canada against Morocco. A Canada that lost at home. A Canada that lost 3-0 against Morocco. A Morocco that completely dominated the scoreline. A Morocco that dominated with a comfortable 3-goal shutout, yet the match statistics painted a radically contradicting picture for the total parity in the midfield control and the final third entries. While Canada successfully matched the North African structural and physical for large stretches, they were brutally punished for the individual defensive lapses in the counterattacks. Ultimately, Morocco moved comfortably into the quarterfinals despite the overall run of play feeling significantly closer than the lopsided 3-0 scoreline suggested. Canada was punished for throwing its team forward and trying to find the goal. The match became structurally contradictory because of Oliver spent the first half handing out unprecedented 6 yellow cards, the most in an open half of any 2026 match, established an ultra strict disciplinary threshold. Yet, he later completely ignored much heavier physical wrapping in the box against Canada attackers without a single VAR review. These are often very, very questionable actions from officials and from every officials that help take the decision whether a situation is reviewable or not. But this Canada gets sent home. And the takeaway for this Canada is that, yes, they lost 3-0 to Morocco. They were exposed and lingering gap in the elite defensive concentration. Reaching the round of 16 represents a historic groundbreaking milestone for the Canadian soccer, the Canadian football. But what does this mean for the future? This deep run provides invaluable knockout stage tournament experience for a golden generation that will serve as the bedrock for the 2030 qualification cycle. But Canada is technically in the same boat as the United States. It comes down to small errors in the game against heavyweights that will make you collapse under pressure and will make you commit an error under pressure. And that's what comes down to competing against some of these European elite heavyweights or African heavyweights that have been making an impact in this World Cup. Morocco is a team full of technicality, physical strength, and a team that will definitely find grit within to keep pushing forward against any opponent that they come and face. But then we move on to a Paraguay France. First of all, this game, very, very, very physical game. A France that wins by the bare minimum from a penalty. A Paraguay deployed an impeccable discipline 5-4-1 structured defensive low block that completely stifled France's star-studded and fluid attack and frustrated them out on the usual passing rhythm. The South Americans, famous for pulling off a historic penalty shootout upset over Germany in the previous round, but they looked entirely secure until a single uncharacteristic moment of defensive panic handed France a second half penalty. Kylian Mbappe calmly converted from the spot and registered his 19th World Cup goal, meaning a toothless French side advanced despite just falling to score a single goal from an open play. And in this match, there is a situation where the match decisive moment came when the referee awarded France a highly debated second half penalty after ruling that Diego Gomez's knee had illegally tripped the onrushing Due. The decision just contradicts the established highly lenient physical threshold the referee had permitted during an incredible grueling first hour of play. So that is the thing. Is this shows inconsistency again. How you are going to allow the players to be playing physical, but then you give away a foul on a situation that it has been previously being showed for the past hour. And yes, it's inside the box, it's understandable, but you are letting the game be physical. And when a part of the game takes inside the box and it becomes physical, yes, the play should be reviewed, but the same consistency should be kept across the whole game. But the Paraguayan players just fiercely protested the sudden shift in strictness. They were arguing that the referee had abruptly altered his definition of foul for a high-profile attacker in a crucial moment. So there is moments in different games, depending on the game, where yes, the inconsistency of the officials show and it shouts. Is not about being right or wrong. It's about being unbiased in the game. And if you are going to let a game settle a certain way, a level of physicality, the game should be at all times, unless it starts getting a little bit more aggressive than where it was, then the game should be played at that level of physicality at all times. And decisions should not be taken depending on the profile of the player or the team that is playing. But inconsistency is starting to be a huge topic in this World Cup. But at the same time, this France and Paraguay team brought some more not wanted news, but brought more comments from figures that have nothing to do with football. A very strong statement was produced from a Paraguayan political figure that acts as a senator in Paraguay. And these comments and statements were directed towards Mbappe. That personally is worrying, if you ask me, when you have people of power saying such things, using words in the most in the most offensive, educated way they can. Yes, to make themselves look smart, but very, very unprofessional and very worrying again. And it creates so many questions towards a political figure and such person who holds a power, who has some kind of political influence, and saying this in a sport that is supposed to bring people together. Yes, the goalkeeper from Paraguay supposedly tried to give Mbappe and talk to him or give him his hand, shake his hand, but things do happen in the field. And for all of those that have played organized football, you know that there's things that are set on the field and are kept on the field, and players don't treat each other nicely at all times. After the game is done, all those things are left on the field for a reason, because the competitiveness is on the field. But players do say things to each other. Players often try to get each other on balance mentally, physically. So it's understandable, but for political figure to come and do such thing is a very, very, very worrying, and it creates so many questions towards that political figure and the position they hold. um some people say that people for certain professionalities or professional lines of work, they should stick to their work. From these comments and what has been going around on social media, as we know, things nowadays, they just, as soon as something comes out, it just spreads out really, really quick. So this is exactly what happened. And more Mbappe, who's an international figure, France has come to his defense. Mbappe did not hold back. I believe that he did the right thing, because this political figure, again, tries to sound educated within their words, but they are using very, very harmful statements. And no matter what, no matter how educated you sound or how you try to line up certain things to be saying to somebody, some of those things will come out the wrong way when they are harsh. No matter what, no matter how educated or how well you try to deliver such an offensive statement. But leave that on. Paraguay gets sent home. What is the takeaway for Paraguay? The takeaway for Paraguay is that exiting via a very narrow 1-0 penalty decision to France, it proved that Paraguay's ultra disciplined 5-4-1 low block is structurally elite enough to neutralize the world's best attacks. For the future, the coaching staff must now find a way to replicate the world-class defensive stability while developing a more progressive, expansive attacking transition scheme to avoid being entirely toothless in the open play. Paraguay has now reached a level where, if they reach this level, this is what is going to be expected of them. And this is what their people in Paraguay will expect of them every time. And this is something now that for the new generations coming into this Paraguayan team, they will be expected to be able to play such games and be able to push to the heights that this Paraguayan team did this 2026 World Cup. But then we move on to a Brazil-Norway, a Brazil that has been sent home, a Norway that has won against one of the biggest World Cup champions that there has been in history. Brazil lose 2-1 against Norway. 5-time champions Brazil entered the matchup as a heavy favorites and took an early lead, seemingly on track to extend their historic 32-year streak of reaching at least the World Cup quarterfinals. However, Norway, they completely inverted. They completely inverted the narrative late in the second half as Erling Haaland struck a sensational quick fire brace to tear up the script. The ultimate paradox of the night saw Brazil eliminated, despite the historic consolation goal from Neymar in the penalty, who became only the second Brazilian after Pelé to score in 4 different World Cups. On the exact night he announced his international retirement. Very sad to see players like Neymar. Um, if you ask me, Ancelotti personally took Neymar for the emotional stability of the Brazilian people. But this Neymar does not look like he can be effective anymore in any way. The level of physical game that is needed nowadays sounds hard to say, and it is hard to say, but Neymar doesn't have it. Neymar does not have what is required for him to play at such level, an international level, where every single national team and player is trying to do their best, live their body on the line to make sure that they help their national team. But what is for Brazil? What is the takeaway for Brazil? A Brazil that was stunned late by Norwegian in a 2-1 defeat. Brazil suffers its earliest World Cup exit in 32 years, shattering a proud streak of reaching at least a quarterfinal in 8 consecutive tournaments. For the future of Brazil, following Neymar's emotional post-match international retirement announcement, the Selecao faces an immediate, identifying, defined generational reset. The Selecao again faces an immediate, identifying, defining generational reset to build a new system around Vinicius, Rodrigo, Endrick. These are players that will most likely be part of the next 2 World Cups for Brazil, 3 World Cups for Brazil. But Brazil has lost its identity. I believe that no more Jogo Bonito, the way it used to be played, can be played nowadays, with how these national teams have closed the gap between the elite heavyweights and the underdogs. But this Brazil finds itself in a moment of looking at its next generation and seeing what type of system to build and around who to build this team that Brazil needs, because Brazil has not been able to go past the quarterfinals. But then we have a Mexico against England. A Mexico that loses at home 3-2 against England. The co-host Mexico walked into a roaring Estadio Azteca, boasting a flawless defensive tournament, record of 4 consecutive clean sheets, yet they completely dissolved at the back to concede 3 goals to England. Despite being reduced to 10 men in the 54th minute, a heavily short-handed English squad paradoxically just looked like a sharper, more dangerous side on the pitch. Jude Bellingham struck twice to inspire the short-headed Three Lions to victory, handing a shell-shocked Mexico in the very first loss of the tournament in a chaotic 5-goal thriller. Thomas Tuchel, only manager to win in the Azteca in the World Cup match. In this game, we had a very contradictory decision. Referee Alireza Fagani took center stage at a roaring Estadio Azteca, visiting his own field monitor twice to deliver highly debated contrasting judgment. First, he used VAR to upgrade a standard yellow card challenge by England's Jarrell Quansah to a straight red card for serious foul play, completely altering the game's competitive balance. He then penalized England Harry Kane for a penalty clearing attempt. The inconsistency is all over some of these games. It's evident more and more if you rewatch the games, look at all angles. The inconsistency of these games keep showing up, and it's not fun to see. But what is the takeaway from Mexico? Conceding 3 goals to a 10-man England squad at the Estadio Azteca completely erased Mexico flawless defensive record and crushed the home fans' dreams of historic Quinto Partido run. But for the future, Javier Aguirre faces an intense national scrutiny regarding his tactical setup, leaving the federation with major questions on how to fix a defensive unit that completely dissolved under high stakes knockout pressure. Mexico now has to reassess and see how can they move on from a round of 16 knockout stage. But then we move on to a Portugal Spain. A Portugal that loses by one against its borders neighbor, Spain. The heavyweight Iberian Derby was highly anticipated as an explosive attacking showcase, but it ironically devolved into a cagey, hyper defensive chess match with minimal space. In the final third, Portugal dedicated a tactical tempo and managed to successfully isolate Spain's dangerous wingers, matching just the tournament favorite stride for stride deep in the match. The defining contradiction came down to a clinical execution as Spain snatched the only goal in the game with one of their few genuine shots on target to eliminate a Portuguese side that had done almost everything rightly defensively. And I said it and I kept saying it. Diogo Costa, the goalkeeper of Portugal, was one of the main reasons why this Portugal was not getting many goals scored on, and one of the reasons why this Portugal was able to make it all the way to the round of 16 and play against this Spain team that is very, very tactical, loves ball possession, and in the last few, they just were able to hit Portugal with a wave of emotional and mental. It was a great game. Very, very questionable for Portugal. A game where possession, the tactical movement was a key thing, not for only Spain but also for Portugal. But for Portugal, it's very sad to see a golden generation not take advantage of one of the best forwards in the game, Cristiano Ronaldo. But a Cristiano Ronaldo that leaves a great legacy, whether some want to question it or not. Ronaldo gave titles and won many titles with this Portugal side. 3 titles with this Portugal side. He brought some silverware to a cabinet that was empty before him and many years before him. This specific Portuguese team has had the luck to play with one of the best football players in the world, but also to play with their best player in history. But for this Portugal team, the takeaway in a KG 1-0 defeat to rivals Spain brought a heartbreak and an abrupt end to a highly anticipated tournament run for a heavily favored Portuguese squad. But for the future of this Portuguese, this match marked the final World Cup chapter for Cristiano Ronaldo, and of that, forcing the national team to completely shift away from his era and fully hand the keys to the next generation and creative talent. Many want to blame Ronaldo for the type of game this Portugal has had, but in reality, personally, I've been following what is of Bruno Fernandes in the Premier. I've been following Joao Neves. I've been following Vitinha very, very much in every one of their Champions League games. And when you see a Bruno, when you see a Vitinha, when you see a Neves, first of all, Bruno cannot play you as an 8. You have to leave him as a 10, or you have to leave him as a false 9. Vitinha is an 8. Tempo, sometimes movement, opening the game. Neves, a 6. A center defensive mid who can also give you tempo, open play, cut plays, intercept. He's physical. He's like a safe box with the ball. Each one of these players has a specific role they play in their club. You cannot expect the same football from club to national team. Why? Because not all of these players play together. But for what is Vitinha and Joao Neves, they do play together. But very, very questionable on the positions they were playing. And soon after Portugal loses this game, Martinez decides to also go. And it's just another questionable decision to this manager, a manager that had Belgium in the golden era, was not able to win anything with Belgium, took over Portugal in a golden era, wasn't able to win anything apart from a nations league in Europe with Portugal. So very, very questionable if this manager is has the credibility to manage national teams that have golden eras. But this Portugal sadly has been sent home in the round of 16. Then we move on to a United States against Belgium, a Belgium that won 4-1. The United States entered the clash with a massive wave of momentum following a gritty structural display in the previous round, but they were just utterly dismantled in 4-goal clinical masterclass by Belgium. While the lopsided scoreline suggested total Belgium dominance from the opening whistle, the Americans structurally matched Belgium's shot volume and box entries for the first hour of play. And in the extreme disparity of finishing quality, as Belgium's ruthless attackers punished every single American mistake, while the United States squad squandered multiple point blank opportunities. In the end, it's all about being able to play with those in the elite level, those heavyweights that when you commit the smallest error, there will be a team and more a heavyweight that will take advantage of those situations. United States stays home because this is being hosted in the United States. I did say that it would have been amazing if this team at least made it to the quarterfinals, but this was personally the farthest I did expect this team to go. There's something that separates top 10 from top 20. There is something that separates from the 10th place to the 20th place. There is something. You can definitely be part of that top 10, but there is something. There's an elite pressure that makes you part of the top 10 nations that will always make the quarterfinals, semifinals of this World Cup. But this United States has the takeaway of getting through a dismantle 4-1 by Belgium ruthlessly exposed the US men's national team's severe defensive frailties and lack of clinical composure when playing against elite top-tier European oppositions. For the future, the heavy nature of the defeat forces the US soccer to deeply evaluate their overall tactical direction, squad depth, and this defensive selection criteria before entering the next major international cycle. I believe that the errors clear the air on who should be playing. Yes, in the end, small errors cost a lot. And in the end, two opportunities that you have and come by, you don't take those chances, you're most likely gonna be suffering on the defensive side when you don't take advantage of the small amount of opportunities that come by. But it's clear, and the air is clear for this United States on who should be playing, what players can handle the pressure at a very, very high stakes game. And the United States once again gets sent home by a Belgium team that supposedly was already out of their golden era, but they get themselves, this Belgium team got themselves in the quarterfinals. Then we move on to an Argentina against Egypt, an Argentina that wins 3-2 against Egypt. The reigning champions, Argentina, heavily dictated possession and seemed entirely in control of a comfortable 2-goal cushion heading into the final stage of the match. Egypt authored a stunning, highly uncharacteristically counter-offensive, piercing Argentina's elite backline twice in a quick succession to completely shock the stadium. Ultimately, the Argentina narrowly survived the 3-2 scare, meaning the heavy favorites advanced despite completely losing tactical control, composure at death. This game just gave too many situations of inconsistent refereeing, often showing so much bias. French referee Lex Letexier faced immense post-match scrutiny from Egyptian players and media who openly accused the officiating of favoring the reigning world champions. The contradiction was put at full display when Egypt had a brilliant equalizing goal entirely chalked off following a meticulous VAR review for a minor physical foul in the early build-up phase. Conversely, multiple aggressive tackles by Argentina defenders during the frantic final 10 minutes were left completely unreviewed, showcasing a highly selective application of VAR review protocol. Argentina, first of all, they was never going to throw themselves back. If you are a football fan, if you are a true football fan, I'm not saying Argentina fan, a Messi fan, a Ronaldo fan, a Portugal fan, or a specific national team fan. If you are a football lover and you appreciate all those teams that have quality, technique, talent, whether it's a national team, a club, a player, but you appreciate the game of football, not an Argentina or a Messi fan. But if you are a football fan, you know that teams like national teams like Argentina, they will do what they have to do so they can win. Suffering is part of their game. Challenge you mentally, physically is part of this Argentinian national team's game. But they will use all the means to win. And in several situations in the end of the game, just make you question the credibility of the officials and the decisions they make. It just makes you question their credibility often, very, very biased, and a game full of inconsistency. But what is the takeaway for this Egypt team? Pushing the reigning world champions to the absolute limit on a 3-2 thriller-proof Egypt can tactically compete on the absolute highest global stage when playing with fearless intensity. But at the same time, I did say this, it's not about Egypt winning. It's about, can Egypt take Argentina to the 90 minutes and win and close the game? As we saw, Argentina tied the game in less than 10 minutes and ended up flipping the whole game in 12 minutes. There's a grit, there is a sacrifice, a mental, emotional, and physical sacrifice that the Argentinians do and produce to make sure that they use all the means necessary and all the means within the game to win. But the inconsistent referee just stained a very, very, very well executed game from Egypt. And for the future of these Egyptian national team, the Pharaohs must build upon this spirited performance by modernizing their defensive structure to match the incredible fluid attacking chemistry displayed by their front line. Egypt that had a very few opportunities, but the few opportunities they had, they connected very well, linked very well, and it was very, very clinical. This game should have been a 3-2 in favor of Egypt. But some turns, some decisions turn the games, attitudes get pushed down, morals go down, and players just cannot emotionally and morally and mentally get themselves back up. But now we go to the last game of this World Cup. The last game of this World Cup is Switzerland against Colombia, a game that went to penalties, a game that went to extra time, a game that ended up 4-3 on penalties in favor of Switzerland, and Switzerland moves on to the quarterfinals. Colombia entered the round of 16 clash as the heavy structural favorites, dictating the tempo and completely pinning Switzerland deep in their own half with fluid attacking transitions, despite dominating possession and forcing Swiss goalkeeper Gregor Kobel into multiple stops. The South Americans just squandered their definite moments, including Lukumi, who rattled the crossbar, and Campas missing a wide open net late in extra time. The ultimate contradiction just culminated in the penalty shootout, where a heavy pressure Swiss squad, historically plagued by poor shootout track record, showed superior clinical composure to advance 4-3 on penalties, securing their first World Cup quarterfinal appearance since 1954, while dominant Colombian side was eliminated without conceding a single goal in open play. But what is the takeaway for this Colombian national team? The penalty shootout heartbreak against Switzerland in this 2026 World Cup ends a high promising run for Los Cafeteros, freezing their tournament progression at the exact same round of 16 barrier they hit in 2018 by falling just short of the quarterfinals. But for the future of this Colombian national team, structurally, this exit marks a painful transition threshold for Colombian football, of course, as it likely serves as the World Cup chapter for legendary veterans like James Rodriguez and David Ospina. James Rodriguez that gave us great memories. We saw great goals. And after that 2014 World Cup, James was known. He was already known, but he became more known due to that amazing 2014 World Cup. A James that, yes, for all of those that seen this guy, he does revolutionize when he plays for this Colombian team. It's for the love of his nation, his people, and his national team where he is from. So it's understandable when certain players do shine more with their national team. But as this just serves as the final World Cup chapter for legendary veterans like James Rodriguez and David Ospina, while handing tactical reins to the devastated but talented younger generation, this Colombia just needs to find certain players for certain positions, and this Colombia will be able to give and push beyond the round of 16. But that's all for this. This is all for this round of 16. But this round of 16 has been decided. This round of 16 has given us our 8 winners that move on and our 8 national teams that have been sent home. Some national teams still have a lot of work to do ahead of them, and those national teams that have expectations, those are the ones that have the pressure. Those national teams that have gotten all the way to this round, yes, there's small things that they have to deal with, but national teams that have expectations sometimes might feel like the progress is not coming, and sometimes it looks like they are farther than from where they should be. But that's part of football. Some nations go through a cycle where they're not producing the best talent, and they have to reassess the situation and start again in the system of their domestic leagues and the clubs on how much talent they're producing. Those specific nations, how much talent are they producing, and are we producing enough talent to be par of the heavyweights in this World Cup? But we have had some things that have been exposed in this World Cup. We have the low block metamorphosis. The round completely exposed the reality that the traditional defensive low block has evolved from a desperate, frantic parking the bus to a highly sophisticated, mathematically spaced defensive structure. The blueprint Teams like Paraguay and Morocco prove that underdogs no longer just absorb pressure. They actively manipulate the favorites' passing lanes. They deliberately also seed the wide areas and overload the half spaces, knowing that heavy favorites lack the creative variation or profile of a true old school physical number 9 to break down a condensed box. But the consequence of this is this completely paralyzed fluid, possession heavy attacks like France and Netherlands, turning their matches into toothless horizontal passing exercises that frequently they are frequently stagnant into extra time and relied entirely on isolated individual brilliance. Then we move on into the asymmetric pressing versus the physical exhaustion. The expanded 48 team tournament structure has officially tuned squad depth and physical sustainability into a core tactical metric rather than a luxury. The tactical tax is high intensity pressing systems, which we saw heavily utilized by squads like Colombia, Mexico, Canada, Austria, looked heavily effective for the first 60 minutes of matches, effectively disrupting the built up play of their opponents. But the collapse of this is the round exposed a brutal 70-minute wall. Teams without the luxury of top tier tactical intelligence finishers of the bench suffer several drop offs in their defensive rest structures late in the game. The fatigue just directly triggered the catastrophic late collapse we saw from Mexico against short-handed England, and Japan in the previous round against Brazil, providing the pressing without rotational depth in a kamikaze strategy in a single elimination football knockout stage. But then also we had the technology replace subjectivity with anatomy. The heavy integration of automated technologies completely altered the biological nature of defensive and offensive game management. The micro margin reality is that with connected ball technology and semi-automated offside technology, detecting microscopic touches in sub-millimeter margins, as seen in devastating disallowed goals for Croatia against Portugal and Portugal against Spain. The round exposed that players can no longer rely on natural human momentum. The systematic shift of this is the attackers are now forced to structurally alter the timing of their runs to be entirely conservative, as natural fluid footballing movements that the human eye registers as perfectly legal are being retroactively erased. This human eye registers the fluid football movements that the human eye registers as perfectly legal are being retroactively erased by digital algorithms. Definitely players are having to completely change how they package or low block inside the box, knowing that VAR is now selectively hunting for phase of play infractions that happen up to a minute before a goal is scored. But this World Cup round of 16 has given us and has exposed the low block metamorphosis, the asymmetric pressing versus the physical exhaustion, the depth of the teams, and how some of these teams go in with an aggressiveness pressure of 60 minutes, but then in the 70-minute, they just totally collapse and they end up paying in the last 20 minutes of the match. And then the technology that has replaced subjectivity with anatomy. Players can no longer rely on that natural human momentum. And now machines, technology has incorporated itself. So now players have to watch what kind of football they play when it comes to this technology and how it's being used during play. But one last thing I want to say about this, it has been an amazing World Cup so far, but apart from the tactical focus of the game and what football brings, the game is in a moment where it will be fully stripped from the people. A game that once fully belonged to the people. We see so many talking points outside the game, and the people who organize it create questionable the people who organize the game create more questions. They make the public question their credibility. Also, moments inside the field that consistently create more questions about how decisions are made and the influence of each of those decisions. Um, the same way they have given us an amazing World Cup with the game we love, they have made the game too much of a political influence. The credibility of VAR technology in general is very, very questionable with their decisions, and the logistical, environmental, and access inequities that often separate the people from the game. And some of us live our lives through this game. And is in a moment of where the game can be fully stripped away from its people who support the game from the stands and the TV screens, and at the same time trying to support either whether it's clubs or national teams by buying the merch, players, jerseys, buying certain numbers on the jersey, buying certain players on the jersey. But the game is in a time where it can be either stripped fully away, or the people will create a situation where organizations like FIFA will definitely take a look and reassess. But for the past few World Cups, FIFA has been hunted by many things that have not gone right and do not look right. And when officials of the FIFA organization are being asked, they either ignore or they just act like it's not what people are saying. But the beautiful game is in a very, very, very contradicting situation at the moment. We can see it from the people that run the organization of FIFA. We can see it from the officials that officiate the games, the actual games in the field. Their influence is questionable on certain decisions they make. The technology, the credibility of how the technology is applied is also being questionable, and the political influence of the game should not be what it is. The game is being stripped away from its people. It's time for some of us to take the game back, the game of the people, a game that we, all of those football fans, have put it out there in a stage where many, many want to be part of. But this is all for today. This is round of 16. We got now quarterfinals that will start on Thursday. This is all for all of these games. Some of these games were stained by the inconsistency of the officials and the VAR that keeps being a huge, huge topic on conversation from the club level to the national level. But for those that don't know, esto es Pase Ambidiestro, ambidextrous pass, fútbol honestamente, soccer, football honestly. And if you like the content, please like and subscribe if you don't want to miss none of this World Cup action. Thank you all. Have a great day. Please like and subscribe.